This is the Bartholomew Town Podcast.
Hi, everyone. Welcome into another edition of the Bartholomew Town Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Bartholomew. On today's episode, my conversation with Barbara Ann Fenton-Fung. Barbara Ann, certainly someone familiar to those of us who follow Rhode Island politics as the proverbial First Lady of Cranston, so to speak, the wife of Cranston Mayor Alan Fung, but also on her own right, certainly a prominent voice in many different areas and a rising media figure, no doubt about it, here in Rhode Island politics. So we discuss her recent announcement that she's going to run for the House District 15 seat in Western Cranston. This is the district occupied by current Speaker of the House, Nick Mattiello. So a fascinating race there. Good to sit down with Barbara and also discuss, I guess her approach to Republicanism, which is a little bit different and a little bit maybe newer than what we see on a national level right now, that's for sure, or even in general here in Rhode Island. For daily reporting and other content, be sure to follow Bartholomew Town on social media. Your search is Bartholomew Town or me, Bill Bartholomew. Support for the Bartholomew Town podcast comes from Newport Vineyards. Here's Executive Chef Andy Teixeira.
The way we, built our culinary philosophy on farm to table and 100% scratch. So we make everything in-house. We bake all our own bread. We cure all our own meats. We butcher animals, and we only source from farmers that we know personally. There's no frozen, anything. We make everything in-house the old way.
Discover more at newportvineyards.com. Hello. Barbara Ann Fenton, ladies and gentlemen, taking on, if there's no Republican primaries, etc., Speaker Nicholas Mattiello in House District 15.
Well, good morning, Bill. Thanks so much. Yeah. This is going to be, all I did was file a CF1, but and for all the people who aren't insiders out there, basically what that means is I have started the legal process to be able to fundraise and start to put a campaign team together. Some people, when we're talking about all the challenges that our nation's facing with like election security and things like that, I actually can't even open up or pay for a web page. I can't pay for stamps to send out a mailer until I take that first legal step. So that's what I did about 2 weeks ago now. And so the response has been phenomenal, and we've been super excited. We were, that process, there had been a lot of rumors as to what my political future would have been, whether I was running for mayor, running for another seat. And so we took that step. We're like, this is where we're going to go. We officially filed that CF1. We actually have to name an office that we're running for. It kind of puts you on one path. And so, it is one of the races that I've been prodded at for the past year, especially after Speaker Mattiello kind of betrayed his own community with the passage of a certain abortion bill which codified late-term abortion for any reason into law. And that is when, to be completely honest, the neighborhood thought he's not representing our values anymore. The Mattiello of 2013, 2014 no longer exists, unfortunately, for many in the district. And so this is when we thought, we put a lot of things together and we're on our way.
So that's an interesting political calculation on the speaker's part. On the one hand, getting the Reproductive Privacy Act through was a response to progressive or even in some cases moderate movement in that area, and he had to sort of navigate that hurdle. At the same time, he now exposes himself
back home in his
on
home
the
district,
right in District 15, a conservative district. He, of course, the 85 votes, whatever it was, Stephen Frias in 2016. So
16,
it's always, it's not as if he has, and that did expand in 2018, Mattiello's victory.
To about 200,
number.
yes, yeah.
But it's not as if he is in a safe district, so to speak.
What you always have to remember is even if you're in leadership, you still represent, the 10,000, about 14,000 people in your home district.
Right.
Okay. And at the same time, you have to answer to them every 2 years. So was it a calculated move? Obviously he had to make his own calculations, what his own beliefs were. But clearly that was an issue that was really, it struck at the heart to many in the district. I have a little different view on it. I mean, I've been a member of the pro-life community for a while. That's absolutely no secret. But the hard part of that bill for me was really the codification of late-term abortion for any reason. Now, I think even some of the most absolutely hardcore pro-lifers would understand that life of the mother at any time, that there's always these exemptions, and none of these real issues are cut and dry, black and white. There's all gray. But I was for people who don't know, I'm an early intervention physical therapist, and although my whole career has expanded from EI all the way up into hospice areas, treating the 106-year-old in their last moments. But when I was in early intervention, it was really hard. I mean, I had preemies born at 31, 30, 29 weeks, and I've taught these kids how to crawl, how to walk. I'll go to some of their high school graduations very soon. That's a hard thing for me to swallow, and for many in the district to swallow, the idea of late-term abortion for any reason. And so, I mean, that'll be a big player, but that by no means is that my defining issue or anything like that. It's just one of the major communities in our district. District 15 is very different probably from the rest of the state. It's a highly pro-Trump, a highly pro-life, and a highly pro-2A district. And so every 2 years you have to answer to the people who you're representing. Yeah, so it's different.
I think about the Paw Sox forums that were held in Middle Cranston, you know what I mean? Just polling going on in that area back in 2016.
Correct.
And how the election and walking that District 15 line for the speaker it's been a bifocal, if not trifocal conversation, answering to, number one, the district, number two, the political infrastructure that has made him speaker, and then, of course, also to the general public.
Correct. And so let's even take away from a single issue, because we can sometimes get bogged down into one issue, and what does that matter to people at large and this larger race. It is all about holding true to your word. And you gave people in the district your word that bill would not come to fruition. When you don't have your word anymore, you really lose almost all your power in politics. You say you're going to do something, you do it. You promise to be that firewall against legislation. The power of the speaker is incredibly hard. And so one of the things people have asked me a lot of times is, well, how do you go up against, somebody who's as powerful as the speaker, can do certain things? Well, he promised for years that he was going to be that firewall for the pro-life community. The pro-life organization in the state, Rhode Island Right to Life, they did mailers. They went out, made tons of phone calls, door to door for him, over somebody else in Steve Frias, who is actually very pro-life. So that's a hard calculation to make. And they made it based on the fact that he had, was going to hold to his word and be that firewall against this bill. And he crumbled. As soon as the last mail ballot was, counted, he crumbled. And when you don't have your word anymore, it gives other communities that may not traditionally support, would more traditionally support the Republican in the race, it gives them a lot of pause as to why they would back Mattiello again, seeing that, he could have killed the power of the speaker. He could have killed that bill in committee, and he chose not to. He hid in his office. So that can be a hard thing sometimes. It gives a lot of other people in the district pause about, what they're going to do. But again, it doesn't matter if it's the abortion issue. It's just that's become the one that's been the forefront here in 15 this time. It could be any district. It could be any single issue. What did you say you told your constituents when you met them door to door? And what did you do once the votes were counted?
Yeah, politics are local, and at the end of the day, that's the body in terms of the General Assembly, specifically the House. That's what it's about. That level of accountability. Your
word is your bond. That's what it is, and holding yourself personally accountable for what you told everybody at the door.
Right. In terms of looking at the bigger question. And look, if Speaker Mattiello were to lose, if you were to defeat him, and who knows, was it going to be Shikarchi? Another person would be installed as speaker. There may not be a factional change unless somehow, look, the Rhode Island Political Cooperative, they have huge gains in terms of the progressive faction. Maybe the Republicans gain a few seats as well. There might be some sort of pressure. But is this about taking out the institutions of power in Rhode Island as much as it's about District 15?
So I am laser focused on District 15. Mm-hmm. I understand people will say, well, what does this mean for the rest of the state? Because obviously there would be a different speaker. There's no actual guarantees that even if he were to win this election, that he would be speaker again.
Very true. Right.
Power shifts all the time. It's happened before. I would say that if people are concerned of an ideological swing one way or the other, they don't focus on this District 15 race, where there's very few ideological differences between the speaker and I. Big picture stuff.
Yeah.
If they're worried about the progressives kind of grabbing hold in the state and grabbing more power, then you look to the districts in the East Bay, down in Newport County, South County, where they're taking a lot more, just smaller races, 1 or 2 at a time, but 1 or 2 at a time adds up. Once you get to a block of 25, and you can, do really crazy things with the budget. You can almost block any certain race you're going through. You can always pick off a few people, but you really could have that strong block. Once you can make a big difference with the budget, then you're a power force. You don't even have to have the speakership. I've always said that that's what Republicans need to get to. They need to be able to get to that magic number to say, hey, look, we want this, and have much more of a voice when it comes to creating some change. I mean, some of the things that have come out of the past few weeks and months for the speaker's constant bad news, unfortunately.
Yeah, the convention
center,
Montanaro.
Well, the Montanaro tuition scandal of a few years ago. We have the Jeff Britt trial starting in a few weeks. You go back and look, there's just been the Dr. Pedro, which there may be a federal grand jury. We don't know. A lot lot of those things are done in secret.
Cock and gun fight against Joe Trillo.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. There's all these things. I know, right? It's only 2 years ago. We're having all these issues here. But you take a look, and it's just, all you need to know is that once you get to that 25, it doesn't matter what group, if it's the Republicans, if it's the progressives, you have major power. So if you want to stop one group or the other going one way, you concentrate on those races where there's a lot more, whether it's highly liberal or progressive, socially progressive people running. That's exactly where you want to go and say, hey, look, I'm going to vote for the conservative Democrat or the Republican in the race. That's how you would minimize the progressives' power, or again, where you stand ideologically. But those are the races that people really need to be worried about.
When I think back to 2018, I can recall, and again, this is just off the top of my head, I haven't actually asked Stephen Fries this, but I remember progressive candidates, people who were pushing for the Reform Caucus, whatever it was pre-political co-op, campaigning on the ground in District 15 for the Republican, Stephen Fries, and Mr. Fries, I don't want to say rejecting their support, but not coming out and saying, look, this is a coalition or making any kind of statement. Would you accept progressive supporters canvassing for you who their goal different, in terms of the media agenda, but did knock Mattiello out of the House? So
I only want people on the ground supporting me who support me and my ideals. And I actually think that when you take a look back as to how that effort, as much as I understand the progressives wanted to take out Mattiello, that was not received very well in the district and actually backfired on their entire cause. Okay, so the 15 community respects people from the 15 community. And, it's one of those things. I wouldn't go and try to interfere in your other races. I wouldn't go down to Charlestown. I wouldn't go down to, say, somewhere in the East Bay and campaign and say, like, this is the way, this is what we got to do it. I want people who are there to support me and support my ideals on the ground. And so luckily, just within the district in the past 2 weeks, I've been so excited, whether it's moms who are part of the PTO at Oaklawn School or, certain people who are part from Cranston West Little League. And we have people in the Hilltop District who have been absolutely frustrated with the speaker because of the enormous sex offender issue that we have in District 15. Those people are starting to rally around. And, again, I'm looking, I understand that there's a lot of interest in this race statewide, but it really is the people of District 15 who will make this decision. And so they're the people that I'm talking to face-to-face, door-to-door, coffees, things like that. And so those are the people that, again, can not only introduce me to some of their neighbors I might not have met yet. And again, I've walked this district several times for my husband, too. So it's not as though I'm
hurt.
Not, right, exactly. I know who lives on each street. So those are the people that are going to make that final call, and the ones I'll be looking to come with me door to door and introduce me to their friends.
This is the Bartholomew Town Podcast.
Hello, listeners. Be sure to follow the pod on various social media platforms for daily content, breaking news, and other stories. On Instagram, search Bartholomew Town Podcast. On Facebook, you can join the Bartholomew Town Podcast Facebook group. And on Twitter, follow me at Bill Bartholomew. What are some of the critical issues in District 15 right now? I think of zoning issues. Obviously, a statewide issue that we're finding is that there's not a statewide policy on solar and wind, infrastructure where they can be sited. That was something that's
a major problem up at the state level. Problem. Right. And again, that's one issue up in the area. However, the bigger issue right now really is the sex offender for us. What might not be obvious to anybody else listening is that there's a statewide law that basically the sex offenders, once they're released from the prison, many of them don't have homes to go to, and so they need to register at a shelter. Okay, and that's again where they serve part of their parole and whatnot. They have to have a registered place where they're living at. So Harrington Hall, which is on the state complex in Cranston, is in District 15. Actually, is the only one that fits the certain feet away a sex offender needs to register from a school. Okay, in the entire state, that's the one shelter. That's the only one that fits that the requirement. So we have a ton of sex offenders registered there. And unfortunately, that puts a huge amount of pressure on our Cranston Police Department, which does a phenomenal job. But again, and working with different organizations that help to run Harrington Hall, that is a real huge issue that you think that the power of the speaker wouldn't have been able to address. That's a statewide thing. Alan, as mayor, my husband, can't do anything from a citywide ordinance. That's a state law. So that has been an incredibly frustrating thing for a large portion of my district that lives, quite honestly, right behind Harrington Hall. That's not in an isolated area at all. They're taking a look, too, at also kind of the quality of life issues, making sure we balance, and it plays a little bit into the solar issue, development versus, again, we're very lucky in that Western Cranston area to still have a lot of open land. And what does the future of Cranston look like up there? Clear cutting fields just to put solar panels up is not what we're looking for, to be quite honest. I mean, we're the area where there's always the bears coming by near the school and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, we can't just clear cut all this area and destroy that land.
Hope Islands, is that the name?
Yeah, Hope Islands. The bear was walking through the playground, and it's because, when you clear their area, I mean, this is where they live. It's a very rural part of the city. And so I'm a big proponent of renewable energy, but like you said, unfortunately, there just aren't the statewide guidelines of where to site it. Like, I think there's a place for wind. I don't think it's right behind Alpine Estates, having these 5 enormous wind turbines. I'm from the island, Aquinic Island originally, and we have wind turbines at certain spots across the island, and they directly feed, like the one at Portsmouth High School, helps to deter energy costs for Portsmouth High School in their thing. But these 5 wind turbines aren't feeding into the neighboring area to reduce their energy costs,
right.
And they're going to so we have to kind of take a look in a much bigger plan, much more coordinated plan statewide. And do I think that, people can be putting solar panels all over their house? Absolutely. I think it's great. Again, it's feeding and cutting down their energy costs, and obviously much better for our planet. I'm pretty pro-environmental Republican, and one of my absolute role models and mentors throughout this entire process, even since I was a little kid, was the late State Senator June Gibbs. She was a great friend of my mother, and she would always be out in the Narragansett Bay. She was one of the huge champions in the 80s and the 90s of cleaning up the bay, and so again, using a kind of a conservation model. When I first got into politics, I kind of got into it by accident. June at the time had told me, hey, why don't you run for delegate to the Republican National Convention? And I thought it looked like hilarious fun. Everybody's wearing crazy hats, and it seemed like a big party. And I was like, sure, whatever, put my name down. And in Rhode Island, you actually have to be elected to be one of those delegates. Somehow, in the time from when she told me to do that to the actual election, June passed away. And I swear she was fiddling with votes or something from up above. I'm like, all right, you're going. So we had an awesome time. So that's actually where I met my husband, down in 2012 at the Tampa Convention. I hit him in the head with an umbrella. It was a hurricane. The actual convention was delayed a day because of a hurricane. And so a lot of things actually worked down there. But being down in that convention, somehow I made my way onto the platform committee. The whole thing was just one thing after another. I remember at that time saying, hey, look, guys, let's take a much more broader picture when it comes to the issue of gay marriage and stuff like that. Was very poo-pooed at the time down there. And, where can we find common ground in civil unions and whatnot? And so that at the time was radical for that era. I remember I was on CNN that night because a bunch of us younger Republicans were like, hey guys, let's get beyond this, and let's see the positive in everybody here. Now, then that was 2012. 4 years later, they're flying the rainbow flag at the Republican National Convention. Like, things change. And so I'm part of that younger Republican crew, and there's been polls after poll done on the 40 and under Republicans who think the environmental issue is one that our party has not tackled well, and one that we definitely need to kind of get up off our butts on in the future. So I think, again, we're going to move the party slowly. I take a look at what can we do on a local level. Okay. I just came back from the UK. I used to live in the UK 15 years ago. They're doing tremendous things. They've actually kind of used some of the things that India has been doing. We have so many plastics in this world, and plastics, they're filling our ocean, and there's so much waste. They're actually recycling the plastics and using it in pavement. And so they're starting right now in Northeast England, which has a climate very similar to ours. So I'd love to see how, again, using plastics as part of the pavement, what we can do to reduce some of our overflow here, not only statewide, but what are we doing to be more environmentally friendly? So there's certain things like that on the local level. I know we can't change the Earth's climate just here in Rhode Island. We can't do everything, but we can do little things. I used to live in Australia, and they have a huge hole, from the ozone layer right over Australia, and it fluctuates from time to time. But yeah, I mean, I remember we would go outside, and you had to wear a hat, otherwise you'd be burned by the time you walked to the grocery store and back.
Sure.
It's wild.
No, I'm with you there. I wonder about obviously we've gotten ourselves into this blue economy notion the governor's pushing. We've got Orsted here. There's I'm working, full disclosure, on a podcast series.
Yeah, it's great. A new one, right?
Yeah, about the blue economy. So I'm immersed in there. I've also seen some interesting plans with this group that have a blueprint for renewable energy, and they describe themselves as progressive entrepreneurs. In other words, trying to use progressive ideologies and ways of thinking in the entrepreneurial capitalistic manner, so to speak. And they've come up with this amazing plan. In fact, they're going to be on, I've already recorded the episode, it'll air after you, that involves using Cranston as essentially a giant battery to receive all of the energy, all the new energy, and then redistributing that around the state and then selling it off to neighboring states. So there are ideas right now that are in the environmental energy area that aren't just purely the Green New Deal, so to speak. There is compromise
there was the extreme, or even Senator Whitehouse couldn't endorse the Green New Deal.
Right.
So I think it's great. We need to use everybody's creative energy to come up with good ideas.
Yep.
Those ideas have to be economically feasible, and also balancing quality of life issues. I think when the 5 turbines that came up right behind Alpine Estates, yes, they're on Johnston land, so Cranston had no say in it. But if you had a 500-foot turbine put up behind your house overnight without you having any say in it, you'd be pretty upset as well. So there's a balance and there's a quality of life. Full disclosure, the turbines off the coast here, I understand wind power and its potential, but what I've heard from the fishermen is it's killing their calamari fisheries. You know what I mean? And every single boat that leaves Point Judith is a small business. It's a Rhode Island small business. So we have to have much better, and it comes down to siting issues and where we are. So there's a balance with everything. And I think we all need to be creative and recognize that sometimes too, especially when we get into politics, we get so polarized. I'm in one corner, you're in the other corner, and there's nobody talking to each other in the middle. And so nuance, even though that doesn't make for great political bumper stickers, nuance is so important and can somehow break sometimes the juggernauts there and really say, all right, let's figure out where we can meet some partially in the middle. Let's start with little projects and let's build trust, because there's very little trust anymore in a very polarized economy and a polarized political world.
That's fascinating. Last couple of minutes here, just sort of like your, I guess, brand.
My brand?
Yeah, it's dangerous
right. So,
word.
right, I know,
but
right?
I think back, I always enjoyed your husband, Cranston Mayor Alan Fung's, I'm sure he didn't enjoy it at all, but his concession speech, the first concession speech, if you can think back to that.
In 14.
14. I thought that was one of the most honest moments in Rhode Island politics. It was very obvious that he had put together support that was very authentic, and it was a close race in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
it seemed like a very painful loss, but also the foundation of where you're on the stage. It just seemed like everything sort of started there with realizing in that. Was that a big moment for you, I guess, is my question?
Not that night in particular. So, obviously my husband has had a tremendous run at Cranston as its mayor, taking it from a city that was practically bankrupt into now the top in the state. And, people always ask me, what's his future? Well, I say his future is his future, and it'll be coming soon enough. One of the things that over the past few years, past 2 years, was I going to run for mayor and continue that legacy? And we talked about all the different things that I was going through. I'm in healthcare. I'm a physical therapist by trade. I'm also a lecturer at Northeastern. I was doing that for years. I love healthcare policy. We're talking about opioids. I'm part of the board of the Cranston Substance Abuse Task Force. We brought in Chris Herron recently too. And, what can we do on the city and state level? And so there's been certain things to us that have been so important. And as Alan, because he's term limited, he will not be mayor come this time next year, he's been inundated with offers from California to Florida, DC, Chicago. And, we've sat down a lot as a family and been like, all of those are great. And the money, they'd be phenomenal opportunities. But we still drive around the state and he'll look at certain cities and certain areas that are just like, God, if that was just pad ready, we could get a developer in there and we could create 400 new jobs. He loves the state. We love the state. And I think our focus now more than ever is really, we've just committed, like, look, we're going to stay here. This will be our life's work. We'll be making the state the best darn state it can be. And that will take different forms over time. But he will be back in public service soon enough. And for my brand, when you're looking at it, again, we have to complement each other. It's hard. We don't go in different directions. And obviously, we're pretty aligned ideologically. All I want to see is every single day, where are we moving, not just to put out the current fire, but, taking a look at what are the needs the next 10, 20 years, making sure we're actually being proactively prepared, in the healthcare industry itself. We have Lifespan and Care New England, and in full disclosure, I've worked for both. But these are companies that are almost just too big to fail from a standpoint of the amount of jobs that they hold in this state, but also, too, primary care and mental health issues. And these are major, major challenges over the next decade to get under control and shore up how strong our healthcare industry is going to be in this state. So that's really going to be my passion, my love, my brand. That's where I'll be taking this.
Do you feel that there's time, you mentioned that you're sort of this, at least one of the spokespeople of a new version of the Republican Party, which I personally think we need big time on a national level. Yeah. I would love to see a Republican Party that moves closer to Chafee-esque thinking, if you will, than,
I think
Robert Byrd.
Well, I mean, you're talking about Robert Byrd, and, you're going to go down south, but let's go back to your original thing here.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at what I think you're sensing is that they're not being responsive to the current day issues. Okay, you'll feel that. Like, where are we going right now? I think there are certain stars of the Republican Party coming up. Nikki Haley, I'm an enormous fan of. Marco Rubio, Tim Scott, my husband, I put in there as well. It's a very diverse Republican Party coming up. This next generation, I think, being a little bit more open to ideas in a standpoint of, again, tackling more of some of the environmental issues, tackling a little bit more of where we're going and not sticking just to social issues and trying to figure out where this compassionate conservatism brand that started down south and trying to figure out how we can really move it. Because if you look at the most successful states in the country, they usually have Republican governors. Okay?
Oh, Charlie Baker in Massachusetts, he's obviously won over that, and there's a legacy of that here in Rhode Island as well.
Larry Hogan, you have Phil Scott up in Vermont, you have Chris Sununu in New Hampshire. All these states are figuring it out and doing more for everybody. It's not just an economy that works for the top. This is an economy that in these states has been spread out. It takes a while. You can't fix things overnight. But again, having more of that Rockefeller Republicanism, which I think we all fall into, and those people I just kind of rattled off there, that's a lot of fun, and that's kind of what's working up in the Northeast. We're a lot different than maybe some of the older traditional Republican brand, but I think that's the move that we're starting to see.
Rapid fire, 30 seconds, just...
Okay, go.
Cannabis.
You got it.
Cannabis should be legal, illegal, recreational.
I'm an enormous fan of medical marijuana, being part of the hospice world that I've been in and home care too. It absolutely dramatically changes their quality of life. If you only have 6 to 9 months left and everything, I wanted to make sure you're pain-free. So I'm a big fan of medical. If you look at the recreational, SAMHSA, which is an organization that mental health takes a look at the first 5 states territory to go ahead and legalize marijuana. They've come up with consistent areas of concern, including higher property insurance rates, more school suspensions. So I'm a big fan of let's not repeat every single person's mistakes so far. The ones that let's learn from them before we go and attack it. I do not believe recreational marijuana should be introduced just to fill budget holes.
But in terms of philosophy, criminal justice, and other non-budgetary reasons, would you be comfortable with it?
If we look at and learn the lessons from those who went ahead of us, we don't need to make their mistakes again. Let's take a look, find real common sense solutions on those, and then we can have a chat. Yep.
I've always dreamed of the day that the Newport Bridge doesn't have any toll on it. I find it outrageous. I'm against tolls very much so. Now we're seeing more infrastructure. Mm-hmm. I know where this is going, and I can know what your answer is, but let's just...
You don't know. You might not know. All right,
okay.
Let's go.
Let's riff on tolls. They're truck tolls, any tolls. They're a barrier. There's got to be a better way to find that money, right?
So there is always a better way when we have so much waste in the budget. Okay. Mm-hmm. If the state budget looks like Cranston's budget, where my husband literally pared down everything to the absolute need to have, what does government absolutely have to do? Then I'd be more comfortable saying, all right, well, this isn't generating enough. But we see right now where toll revenue is running incredibly short, but we're plugging those holes with all the federal funding. We're getting enormous federal funding, thanks to Jack Reed and other people as well. So the Newport Bridge is, again, I'm going to push back on that a little bit. Bridges are different, especially those level kind of bridges, not the little ones that we don't even realize are bridges and they're going across like brooks and streams. What we see with the Newport Bridge is what happens when there was no maintenance. Now, that does not mean you need tolls all the time. It's just that there needs to be a true maintenance plan. When that piece fell through towards the top, and it was about a month and a half ago, there was literally a piece of the bridge that fell down into the ocean. Like that's petrifying, okay. This bridge is in such disrepair right now. I understand. Again, it takes political will up at the State House to say, hey, look, we need to every single year not pull $5 million from this budget here and $2 million from here. Stop scooping. Put that money into the restricted funds just for dedicated maintenance. So that's where I feel on that one.
Would you consider abolishing the Bridge and Turnpike Authority, making it a part of DOT, or do you think we need such an authority right now? Still,
the devil's in the details. I've heard that plan just kind of floated out there. Again, who has their eye right on what needs to happen? And all four of these major bridges, when I say the major bridges, we're looking at Jamestown, Newport, Mount Hope, and Sakonnet. Sakonnet's still rather new, but you need to continually perform maintenance. Otherwise, it ends up what happened with the old Sakonnet Bridge. So, those are a little bit different than the other bridges around town. I would want to see a very detailed plan before I'd even support that.
And last question, the media here in Rhode Island. I heard you on Tara Granahan and WPRO. I think it was you were doing your announcement. You're revealing.
I told Tara, I was like, yeah, we'll go through. Yeah.
In studio. You seem comfortable already. Obviously, you've got some experience, and as a lecturer, you're a pedagogue, so you understand the basics. But do you feel like you're going to have fun with the media?
I have so much fun.
Or is that a drag for you? I mean, it's going to be...
Oh, no. People are enormously kind. And I think everybody, especially the media who I've been with for a while, I mean, it's a small media crew here in Rhode Island. So over the past 2 gubernatorials and the mayoral for my husband, obviously I get to know them and kind of go. And so I think everybody kind of knew that one day I would jump into the political arena. Like one day this would come. People are extraordinarily kind. I'm honest with them. They're honest with me. We keep it that way. And I think when you do that, there's a mutual respect for everybody. The bills that popped up last week when they're trying to restrict what the media can report. I mean, like the silly things that pop up, like, what do you, like, you're right, exactly. Yeah. I can't even imagine that'd be constitutional on the face of it.
Right.
I think it goes back to my original premise. As long as you keep your word, and I took some fire for going on Tara first. Like, I know I made some people a little angry on that, but I gave my word to her. Really?
I mean, that's the thing too, is like, you got to be, come on. I mean, it's
right. I mean, it is what it is. I don't, it's fine. Again, I committed to Tara. Tara's like, and so I kept my word to her. And it's the same thing dealing with any media. I keep my word to you. Yes, I'm going to be there at 11 o'clock tomorrow. Let's do it. And that's how you create a strong relationship, not only with the media, but just with people in general. So keep your word.
Well, here we go. It's like I said, it's March and long way to go. Probably talk again before your primary.
Absolutely. I look forward to it.
Yep,
absolutely.
No doubt.
Thank you so much,
Thanks.
Bill.
As always, thanks so much for spending part of your day here in Bartholomew Town. Remember, there's new episodes every Tuesday and Friday, and over 170 episodes waiting for you wherever you're listening right now. Until next time, I'm Bill Bartholomew. We'll talk soon.
This is the Bartholomew Town Podcast.
At HealthSource RI for Employers, we provide access to health insurance to more than 1,100 local businesses and nonprofits. and 96% of them renew through us every year. Maybe it's our choice of 19 different health plans, our 10 years of customizing solutions, or our one local team of dedicated experts helping employers find quality health insurance. See how our numbers stack up for you. Learn more at healthsourceri.com/employers.